Welcome to the Thrive Co podcast, exploring the inner side of success. I am your host, Nikki, and each week we will explore the mindset shifts, personal growth, and everyday tools that will help you to navigate ambition, manage stress, and build a life that actually feels good on the inside. Through solo episodes and honest guest conversations, we look at what it really takes to grow, change, and thrive in the modern world. Hello and welcome to the Thrive Co podcast. How are we, guys? How has your week been? If you're listening to this in real time, I hope you're having a really good weekend. So I need to caveat this episode just with a little personal share. I'm not going to go into too much detail because, quite frankly, it's not for me to tell, but I do always want to be honest with you. And over the coming weeks and months, there may be times where you will detect or tell that my energy is maybe not as good, or I'm not as high vibe as usual. And I don't just want to brush things under the carpet and pretend like everything's okay when it's not and there is something going on. So anyone that's listened to Hello Sunday in the past and previous podcasts or is an OG will know that last year as a family we had a really tough year. We obviously lost my nan, but she was nearly 97. That was definitely something that was more in the pipeline. It was, we all knew that time was coming and we were sort of prepared for it. But then we also had the horrendous news that my incredible, amazing, beautiful sister-in-law, who is my brother's partner and the mom of my two little nephews, had got stage 4 aggressive appendix cancer. So it had spread through her abdomen. She had some really, really horrendous surgery just before Christmas, and then all of the biopsies and everything confirmed like the stage and how aggressive it was. She absolutely smashed her treatment last year. She completely changed her life, her lifestyle, removed all toxins, went on the cleanest diet. She was amazing. And we got the really good news just before Christmas that she had got what they call no evidence of disease, which is basically remission. However, we always knew there was a danger that this type of cancer could come back. And unfortunately, we had the news last week that it has. And I'm not going to go into details about kind of like where and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot up in the air at the moment, but it's not great news. And there's some quite scary kind of like words and topics being discussed at the moment. So it's really tough. It's been a really, really tough couple of weeks. I think, you try and crack on, but anybody that's gone through anything heavy is no stranger to the fact that whatever you do, there's always this overhanging sense of mild anxiety and like the dread, and that little period when you wake up in the morning and you forget for a second and then it all comes back to you. So it's been a struggle, but look, I had a choice of either not recording and whilst I'm feeling like this, just letting the podcast fall to the wayside. But we don't know what we're dealing with. This could be, quite a long-term thing. So I need to have this focus. I love, love, love building Thrive Co. I love recording the podcast. I love hearing from you guys. So I am going to continue to record. I am going to try and bring my whole self, my authentic self, but also the energy, because people don't listen to self-development podcasts to be, down in the dumps. They want motivation and a mindset change. And it's normally when they're struggling with something themselves. So being real, this is going on, but also I am going to try and park it and just bring as much of, my normal energy as I possibly can. With that said, it actually does inform today's topic and episode a little bit, because what I wanted to talk about today was how you can create a sense of decluttering of the mind and more of, less of a mental load, I should say, by doing little simple things when you are experiencing times of stress or anxiety, or you're going through something emotionally. And it's something that I refer to as defaults. So when you are living your day-to-day life, when you are going about every single day, we will have a series of decisions that we have to make. We will have decisions about like everyday things. We will have decisions that come into us that are, one-off things, maybe to do with work or to do with family life. And they all drain your mental resources and your mental capacity. Every single decision that you make has an amount of kind of like mental energy that is required to put into it. And actually your brain doesn't know if you are making a decision about, where you should move to, like a massive life decision. Should you change cities? Should you move from the city to the country? Or what you're having for lunch? It's the same capacity and the same resources that you're drawing on, regardless of what decision that you're making. And so in order to reduce decision fatigue and to reduce your mental load, especially when you know that you're going to go through a really busy period, or like me at the moment, quite an emotionally draining, anxious period, creating defaults for some of the decisions and habits and routines in your life, things that you can just default to, and making sure that you're planning properly is the best way that you can possibly help yourself. And when things are out of your control, there's, things going on in the world at the moment, things going on personally, things going on professionally, those things that you can't control, you have no agency over. So controlling the little things that you can will make all the difference then to how you feel about the things that you can't control. So you're not overwhelmed, or people in general are not overwhelmed because they lack discipline or ambition. It's normally because too much of your day relies on active decision making. You're having to make all of these little decisions throughout of your day. And like I just said, the low stakes decisions, they take the same cognitive resources as replying to an email from a client, or solving, a really, really complex issue. It's still a decision that you have to make, and it's still pulling on those resources. And what it means is that you have less capacity for focus, less capacity for creativity. And so let's just say you get up in the morning and you're deciding what to eat, you're deciding what to dress your kids in, you're deciding whether or not you should work out, you're then deciding what coffee you're going to have, or whether you're going to have a coffee, or maybe you should have an electrolyte drink. You're then deciding which route you're going to take to work, or all of these little things are draining your resources, your mental capacity and your resources, before you've even got to the office, or before you've even dropped your kid to school. For those of you that are regular listeners to the show, or maybe you know me personally, you won't have been able to get away without hearing me talk about Simprove. Simprove is a scientifically backed, water-based probiotic drink. You drink it daily, and it has been scientifically proven to help with things like bloating, IBS symptoms, pain. It was actually a dietitian friend of mine that introduced it to me last year, and I honestly wouldn't be without it now. It's helped with my energy, with my bloating, it's helped with my immune system, and also things like my skin. The list is honestly endless. Now, I have got a code for you. So if you'd like to try Simprove, you can get 50%, that's a massive 50% off your first 3-month subscription by going on to simprove.com and putting in the code Nikki50. That's NIKKI50, or clicking the link in the show notes. And what that then means is if you then say come lunchtime, get a really important meeting put in your diary where you're going to be required to come up with solutions to an issue, or your partner calls you and is emotional over something that they need your help with, or maybe one of your parents or your friends texts you and says, I really could do with your help or advice. You've got a lot less ability to deal with that stuff than had your morning have just consisted of default decisions and things that you'd already planned, that you'd already put into your day before the fact. It's the reason why Steve Jobs used to wear the same outfit every single day. Every single day. You remember that like turtleneck sweater that he used to wear, and the same chinos, I think it was. He wore the same outfit every day. Simon Cowell does exactly the same thing. There's probably numerous other people of, that are successful in various industries that take away that little decision out of their day every day, because that is one less decision that they have to make. They're not sat there thinking every morning, oh, shall I wear these jeans? Oh, wait, they're not ironed, or they're in the wash. What else can I wear? What goes with what? It's just literally picking out the same outfit every single day. Now, I'm not suggesting that you have to wear the same thing every day, but these really successful people understood and continue to understand what the decision making sorry, put my teeth back in, what resources are required to make decisions, and taking away those tiny little decisions is the easiest thing that they've got control over. So when your day has predictable elements, your nervous system doesn't have to stay on high alert. If you know already how things are going to play out, and you already know, and when I say how things are going to play out, I don't mean every element of your day. This isn't about rigor, but the things that you know are going to happen every day: getting dressed, eating your meals, your journey to work, your kids going to school, the meetings that you might have. If you know when those things are happening and what they're going to look like, your nervous system isn't constantly on high alert trying to look for things that it needs to understand the world around it to make decisions, because you've already put into place the systems and processes and habits and taken away that cognitive process. Motivation will fluctuate, but the defaults that you put in place to support your day will help it to flow and be consistent. There might be mornings where you wake up and you're like, oh, should I go to the gym today, or should I go to that Pilates class today? If you've already put in place a default where you've got a morning routine that consists of going to the gym, and you just get up, you almost don't put any thought behind it, then that is going to help you to just get up and do the thing, and it's going to flow and it's be consistent. And not only that, but when you're doing those things, your self-trust and self-respect, and I speak about this all the time, but they are going to increase because you are showing up for yourself. Not only that, but things like exercise are going to help you deal with, emotional stuff. They're going to help you to be resilient. It helps energy to move through your body. So not only are you taking away the decision, but you're actually doing the thing that you promised yourself that you would do. And that's just by planning. It's just by having the default in terms of which days you're going to do what, in essence. So especially in times like, low capacity periods where you might be traveling a lot, you might know that you're going to be stressed. Maybe you've got a big work project or presentation. Maybe you're going through something similar to what I'm going through at the moment, and the emotional fatigue is real. You don't know what news you're going to get from one day to the next, or just it being on your mind a lot is quite fatiguing. Putting these systems and these defaults in place is going to really help during those periods. And we're not saying here that you have to be rigid with it. This isn't a regimented, military structure. But what it is comfortable defaults. Can I say the word default anymore, by the way? That you can fall back on, things that you can fall back on that will mean you're making less decisions and building self-trust. So now that I've talked about what they are, let's talk about some of the things that you might be able to put in place defaults for so that you're not constantly making decisions through the day. So the first one I would say that nearly everybody struggles with, unless you are fortunate and have somebody that cooks all your meals for you. But even then, you're probably having to incorporate into the decision-making process is meals. So the meals that you eat every day, and I'm not saying eating the same meal every day, but your breakfast, your lunches, your dinners. Normally, most people want to hit, certain nutrition goals, or they want them to be varied and nutritious. But depending on the type of day you've got, like, for instance, I know for us at the weekend, we'll have something that's maybe a bit more time consuming, a bit more, oh my gosh, sorry, a butterfly has literally just landed on my window. Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. We always say that a butterfly, when it was my nan's funeral, when we went to the wake afterwards, it was in this like big conservatory at the back of a hotel, and hundreds, and I mean literally hundreds of butterflies were swarming all around the conservatory as we sat down to eat. And we always say now that it's a sign from my nan, and I've never ever noticed a butterfly land on my window, the office window, like that. Anyway, but yeah, the meals that you eat will need decision making. There'll be times in your life where you can afford to have more time, like the weekends. As I was saying, we tend to have a lot more time to plan and to prep, and it's a lot less, you're doing it in a day where you've had a lot less on normally. So the end of a day, a lot of people don't particularly want to spend absolutely hours over the cooker or the stove. We also want to have a bit more of an evening, so it's more about quick meals that you can just kind of whack in the oven or do very quickly, but still hit those nutrition goals, are still varied. And what I would say is having in your locker a series of meals that are super quick, super easy, that you have got the ingredients in for, and that are going to be, ones that you can fall back on, that if at the end of the day you're shattered and your work day's run over, you have that meal in your locker. So for me, it's things like for breakfast, eggs and bagel. I can whack a bagel in the toaster and either fry or scramble a couple of eggs, and that is going to fill me up. It's things like overnight oats that I prepare the night before. I do this a lot in the week, especially when I've got a gym day and I know that I'm going to be pushed for time in the morning. I will do overnight oats and then just get those out the fridge next day. I can eat them at my desk if I want. Things like porridge, which are, again, really, really easy to do. You can just reheat them, those little porridge pots, especially the ones that are not as high in sugar. And then for lunch, to be honest, for me, it's normally either a wrap or a jacket potato, because I know then that I'm getting some carbs, I'm getting protein because I've normally had chicken or tuna in it, and a bit of salad. It's all stuff that we have in the fridge. And then for dinner, my husband normally sorts the dinners out, but we have probably 6 or 7 meals that we tend to rotate. Stir fry is a super, super easy one because it's really nutritious and it really hits the health kind of metric, but also it's really easy to do, like 15-20 minutes and you're pretty much done. So having some default meals that you are going to be able to fall back on and planning them into your week, rather than waking up every day saying, what should we have to eat today? And then having to go out and buy the ingredients. If you know that you're not going to have loads of time, meal prepping, meal planning, not even prepping in advance. I'm not saying spend a Sunday prepping, but just having them in your locker, knowing that you've got the ingredients in, it's going to take a lot of that decision making away from you. The same thing applies to grocery shopping. Like, we have a shared list in our notes on our phone, my husband and I, and we literally buy the same stuff every single week. It might be that one week we'll swap out beef mince for turkey mince, or it might be that we'll swap beef burgers for turkey burgers, or are having like pasta one week instead of a stir fry. But I'd say 9 times out of 10, we're shopping the same stuff, and we will speak to each other before we do the shopping, and whoever does the shopping just goes down the list and gets that stuff. And it's all the things that we know are going to be able to like hit the default meal. So everything in the cupboard, then if we want one of those default meals, we can just, we know that we've got the stuff in. So meal planning, grocery shopping planning is probably one of the things that I would say most people can benefit from. The other thing which I touched on earlier is your clothes, what you're going to wear every day. And when I used to be in an office, I used to plan the night before. I tend not to do that now because I work for myself, so I don't necessarily have to plan my outfits because I have a little bit, I wouldn't say I have more time actually, because my morning routine is slightly different now, but I definitely don't have to be as formal. But I tend to have things that I know go together. So I have, bodysuits in different colours. I have the same chinos in different colours. I've always got my jeans ironed. I have a series of just white, black and grey t-shirts. Things that I know go together and that I can just pull out of the wardrobe, and I know if I've got meetings online that they're going to look professional, but equally they're comfortable enough for me to work from home for a long period in. Planning the night before, if you're working in an office or on site, if you don't wear a uniform, is one of the best tips that I can give you. And that isn't every single night, because if you're knackered and you're coming home and you're stressed, the last thing you want to do is put all your decision making at the back end of your day. So I used to do that on a Sunday. When I worked in an office, I'd think, right, how many days am I in this week? 3. Okay, so I need 3 outfits. Doesn't matter what day I wear them then. It wasn't like this is Monday, this is Wednesday, this is Thursday. But it was just outfits that I knew were ironed, washed and ironed, and were in my wardrobe ready to go. So having clothes, I mean, if you want to go as far as Steve Jobs and Simon Cowell and have like a uniform for yourself, then absolutely, that's a really good way to go. But planning and knowing what your kind of default style is and having a few of those items ironed and doing that at the weekend, ready for your week, one of the best tips that I can give you to cut down that like, oh my God, what am I going to wear in the morning type thing, and that panic of it's not washed. The third area that I would say for me especially has been a game changer is the morning routine. Now, your evening routine is equally as important, but I don't necessarily have a set evening routine. It really depends what I'm working on. Sometimes if I'm doing research, I'll work late into the evening. Sometimes I won't. I've got like a bedtime routine, but I'm not going to talk through that now because that's less decision fatigue. But the morning for me definitely was something that I was struggling with when I didn't have a routine and when I hadn't got defaults that I just fall back to. So what I tend to do, and this will be different for everybody, but I chat to my husband at the weekend and ask him what days he's working from home, which days he can do the morning walk with Marley, our dog, and therefore when I can go to the gym or Pilates. And then I will plan my morning routine for each morning depending on whether I'm walking the dog or going to the gym. It's not that different, to be honest. I tend to need a little bit more time if I'm going to the gym because it's a 10-minute drive there and a 10-minute drive back. But generally speaking, what was happening before was I was getting up in the morning and I was thinking to myself that month, right, I know that I want to focus on my skincare and I know that I want to, do some sort of like gratitude practice or visualization. I was getting up in the morning and everything was so higgledy-piggledy as to, oh God, I'd be brushing my teeth thinking, I didn't do my gratitude, or I'd be putting on my moisturiser and then be like, shit, I didn't do my LED mask. So what I do now is I have a list in my phone, which again sounds quite rigid, but it works for me, of typical things that I need to do most mornings. I'd say weekday mornings, but generally speaking, it's most mornings. And I literally tick them off as I do them through the morning, and they tend to be in the order that I do them. So I'll just quickly go through mine. Yours might look completely different. If you're a parent, then I appreciate this will look different. But I get up, the first thing I do is put in my eye drops. I do that whilst I'm in bed and put on some lip balm. I then get out of bed and take the dog out normally it's me, it could be my husband, but if it's me doing it, I'll take the dog outside so he can go to the toilet, bring him in, give him his medication and make his breakfast. And those are the first things that I do. Whilst he's eating his breakfast, I will drink my Simproof, because that's a non-negotiable every day. And then once I've had my Simproof, I'll make myself a drink and a coffee. So I'll have my electrolytes with creatine and collagen. The electrolytes are flavoured, so it's like a pineapple and mango water. And I just put all my powders in there. And I'll drink that downstairs, and then I'll take mine and my husband's coffee up to bed. If he's doing the coffees, he will bring them up to us and do the dog. Then I'll sit in bed and I will put on my LED mask. And whilst my LED mask is working, I will do my gratitude practice or my visualization or whatever it is that I'm feeling I want to do that day. And then once I've done that, I've got a face roller that I literally use for just a couple of minutes on my face. And then once that's done, I'll either get up and get dressed to go to the gym, or I'll get up and get dressed to go to on the dog walk. And then either between sets at the gym or whilst I'm on my dog walk, I'll check in. I've got 2 sort of peers and colleagues that I do like an accountability with every morning. We share our like day plan to keep ourselves accountable. And then once I'm back from either the gym or my dog walk, I'll then get dressed, do my skincare, do my makeup. And that's just my very simple. It sounds like a lot, but actually if you look at it, it's just getting up, letting the dog out, doing my supplements and having 10 minutes back in bed drinking a coffee whilst I visualize and do my LED mask. It's not actually that much time. It's probably about 30 minutes in total. But having a list of it like that is so much easier. It stops me having to think like, what am I doing this morning? Am I going to the gym? Do I want to go to the gym? That negotiating with yourself is just like, it's so draining. It's so draining. And it really just depletes your resources for the rest of the day. So like this morning, for instance, I got up, did my morning routine, but then because I was taking the dog to daycare, I just got into my gym stuff, took the dog to daycare and went straight to the gym afterwards. So it was a non-negotiable. It was like in the sat-nav I was going. It wasn't oh God, should I go, shouldn't I go? It was just like, you're doing this. And then in the evening, like I said, I don't really have much of a true evening routine, but there's a few things that I do. So I'll look at what I've got on the next day and plan the next day so that I'm not having to do that the next morning, because that is a big, piece of mental energy that I really need to save for that day. I'll do my skincare. I'll make my breakfast for the next morning if I'm having oats. Obviously brush my teeth, do my nail oil, and then just think of the best thing that happened that day when I get into bed. Sometimes if I haven't done my LED mask in the morning, which is rare, I'll do that. But it's just a few little simple like self-care things that stop me from thinking, oh, what have I got to do next? And it's just literally in a list on the notes on my phone. So having a morning routine and having, it could change every day. Maybe your kid goes to nursery 2 or 3 days a week. Maybe if you're building a business, there are places that you have to be. Clients might have meetings with you early, or you might have to go into if you're running like a clinic or a hairdressing salon. But just having that morning routine, and what I do is I like highlight things that I've got to do that day and just put things in italics if they're sometimes on there and sometimes not. So like sometimes I'll walk the dog, sometimes I'll go to the gym. They are in italics, so I'll just tick the one that makes the most sense for that day. But it's just something that is stopping you from having to constantly make the decisions in the morning on the fly. So that is, for me, probably one of the most important changes that I've made, especially with running a business, because I have to know that I've got all of my personal bits ticked off in the morning before I can go into my day. And then the other things that have really helped, and these are more kind of like little processes, but I have defaults on things like recording this podcast, for instance. I tend to do it in a lunch hour on a Wednesday or a Thursday, because that is the day when my husband's in work. So that is like in my diary and it just happens. I also have times where I will do my finances. So I know at the end of the month, I will put any tax aside and reconcile anything in my online finance system, my Xero I use. So that's a non-negotiable. That's in the diary. I know that I have my emails open at certain times in the day. So it's having those little systems in place so that you're not constantly thinking about those things in the background. You know, if you've got things that need doing at the weekend, have a list that you can just pop them into, and then you know that your default is in the week you're not doing the gardening, or you're not doing the DIY, or you're not opening deliveries. You've got a system whereby you know when you're going to be doing your finances for your business, or you know when you're going to be putting your tax aside, you know when you're going to do your admin. I tend to have 2 little sort of slots in the day that I do my admin, one just before lunch and one at the end of the day. So you know that you're going to get around to those tasks, and you're not having to think and decide, oh, should I do that now? Should I do that now? Should I get my finances sorted now? Because honestly, I cannot tell you the amount of mental energy that it takes to constantly make decisions, that when you are busy or tired or stressed or emotional, you really, really don't want to be depleting yourself on those decisions. So I hope that that's helped. I know it's probably something that makes, you know, you might be sat there thinking, really, Nikki, is that it? Of course I plan. Of course I do this. Of course I have default meals and, you know, default clothes. But actually, you know, looking at what is draining you the most, where is the energy being sapped in your life? Is it the evenings because you're constantly having to think about what meal you're having, and then maybe having to go and buy things for it, and then by the time you finish cooking it's like 9 o'clock? Or is it your mornings, or your morning's really stressful and you're having to constantly make decisions for you and your family that you could just plan for, you know, in advance? Or is it your business? Maybe you are constantly checking your emails, or you're having to, you know, you've not got like recurring times for meetings, and you're having to go back and forth with people all the time. Something I've been doing, which is really helpful, is sending out my Calendly to people that I'm inviting into a meeting, so they can just book in with me, making sure my calendar's updated, and then they can book in. There's some people that I go to for like my beauty appointments who have got the most amazing booking systems, and you can just book it all online. My doggy daycare has a booking system. You just book him in online and then it sends you an invoice. And I always think those that don't, it must be so draining to have to go back and forwards constantly with people to make appointments and chase for payment. So if that's you, just have a think about how you can streamline and make things easier for yourself. Because honestly, when it comes to the bigger things that really come out of nowhere and blindside you, then you're going to have so much more mental capacity and emotional resilience, because it's not all been taken up by the little shit things that you're having to constantly decide day to day. So I hope that's helped. I hope that you found it useful. Please go and follow the show. Please share it. If you've got females in your life that are building service-based businesses, introduce them to Thrive Co. The direction that I am going with the business as a whole, not necessarily this podcast, but the offers that I'm going to be putting out there, the group workshops I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be looking at doing retreats in the future. It's all aimed at women that are going to be scaling and building, whether they're just freelancers looking for clients, or whether they're building, you know, an actual business with employees. They could be hairdressers, they could be injectors, they could be recruiters, building a social media business, whatever it is, digital marketing, anything that's service-based. If you're a female in that space, or you know women that are building businesses, please introduce them to the podcast and to Thrive Co as a brand, because we're going to be doing some really incredible shit, and I'm really fucking excited. So have an amazing week, and I look forward to seeing you all again next time. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, make sure you are following the podcast, and don't forget to share episodes with a friend who may need it.